Okay, probability and odds. Another quick one. Probability is the chances of something happening. And I know this should be review for most of us, but we're going to go through this, another quick little unit. Probabilities can be expressed as fractions, as decimals, as percents, depending on how your teacher wants you to express it. Follow their directions, but we'll kind of go through that process. So we're going to start by looking at an example. A lot of times when we talk about probabilities, we use dice as an example because it has 6 sides, so we can figure out the chance of things happening. So here is a table that represents all of the possible outcomes that could possibly happen when you roll a pair of dice. Okay, so you could get a 1 and then a 1, a 1 and then a 2, a 1 and a 3, so on and so forth. Okay, so as this list gets created, you realize that in the end there's 36 possibilities. It's a 6 by 6 table. There's 36 possible outcomes that could happen. So when we look at the ones that are highlighted here, these are obviously all the doubles. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 doubles. So to find the probability of, or your chances of getting a double, or getting doubles when you roll both die, is going to be 6 out of the total possible. Okay, so let's look at this, and so we have an official formula. Okay, the probability of an event happening is the number of favorable outcomes. The favorable outcomes in this case is getting doubles. Okay, we realized there were 6 of them, so the number of favorable outcomes is 6. The number of possible outcomes is 36. So the probability would be 6 over 36. We want to make sure it's reduced, so we say 1 over 6. Okay, that's the probability. Now there's a few other ways that we could write that. Okay, we could say that 1 divided by 6 is approximately 0.166666. Now that's not great because it's not clean. Okay, we have to round that off. It's not a great way to do it. You could say it's approximately 16.6%. Okay, but I think 1/6 is probably the best way to express this probability in this case. Okay, so remember when we look at probabilities, all probabilities will be between 0 and 1 inclusive. So a probability of 0, okay, means that it's impossible. A probability of 1, which is really, it moves over 2 places, it's 100%. That means it's 100% certain that it will happen. Everything else in between 0 and 1 kind of falls on this chart as to how likely it is to happen. The closer you are to 1, the more likely it is to happen. The closer you are to 0, the less likely it is to happen. In the middle, that's your 1/2 or 0.5, which is 50%. So if we look at the example with rolling the doubles, which we decided was 1/6, that's going to fall somewhere down here. The probability of rolling doubles is not impossible, but it's not a great chance that it's going to happen. Okay, 1 out of 6 times it might happen. All right, so let's look at another example. A quality control inspector for office suppliers checked a sample of 250 marking pens and found that 14 of them were defective. Find the experimental probability of choosing a defective pen. So in this case, it's kind of strange because we just said that it's favorable outcomes, and you wouldn't think that something being defective is favorable. But in this case, it's the chances of something that you're interested in happening. So if we're trying to do a study on defective pens, that would be the favorable outcome. So the number of defective pens in this case was 14. Okay, the total number of pens in the sample was 250. Now I would just make sure that you reduce this fraction, and you know that both of these can be split in half, so this would be 7 over 125, and I think that's a probability that would be acceptable. Okay, if you wanted to, you could do 7 divided by 125, and that would give you 0.056. That would be the decimal, and if you wanted to write that as a percent, that would be about 5.6%. So those are other ways to write probabilities. Okay, so sometimes you won't see things as probabilities, you'll see them as odds. Okay, and odds is something different. Odds is the number of favorable outcomes to the number of unfavorable outcomes. So in other words, the numerator and the denominator, when you're trying to find odds, have to add up to the total. Okay, you don't put it over the total. So in this example, a bag contains 6 red marbles, 3 blue marbles, and 1 yellow marble. So we have 6, 3, and 1, so we have 10 marbles in the bag. Find the odds of choosing a red marble. Well, red is 6. That's favorable. So if 6 are favorable, how many would be unfavorable? Has to be 4, okay? Now, once again, this is not reduced, so I would call this 3 over 2, or sometimes when we're writing odds, you'll see it written like this, 3 to 2. Last example, they want us to do the same thing. They want us to find the odds of choosing a blue marble. Well, let's go back. How many blue marbles were there out of the 10? There was 3. Oops, wrong way. So you would say 3, 2, that's the favorable. So if 3 of them are favorable and there's only 10 altogether, that means 7 of them must be unfavorable. So in other words, you'd say this is 3 to 7. Those were the odds, okay? So this was just a quick video covering probability. Just as a reminder, it's the number of favorable outcomes out of the total, where odds is the number of favorable outcomes to the number of unfavorable outcomes. So the numerator and denominator both add up to the total when we're trying to find odds, okay? So that's it for this one.